impacted by droughts, floods, rarefaction of resources or disappearing resources, women with no access to contraceptives, those who are unprotected by laws and are subject to domestic violence, to those who suffer salary gaps. We need a solution for the 783 million living under the poverty threshold, those suffering from hunger and malnutrition, those without access to health care. There must be a solution given to youth, the driver of history. I'm talking about more than 2 billion people between the ages of 10 and 24 years old. 80% of them living in developing countries. A solution is needed for all of those whose eyes are fixed on us, because this solution depends on what we are able to do here together in this assembly. Those who think that we don't owe any solution to those I've mentioned before are wrong. They are wrong, because in so thinking, they create crises. They create a world that is worse, that would be inherited by our children and future generations. Today, with the 2030 agenda, we've begun the path forward. We've begun working on the solution. Think about the gaps in GDP. If we want to create stability and balance, this state of inequality must be addressed. Action must be taken. This is the reason, as I announced last year as well, that I decided to bring France's ODA to 1 billion euros by 2019, credits increasing by 40%. It is also for this reason that combating inequality will be the priority of the French presidency of the G7 summit. France, after Canada, which I would like to hail here, is the incoming chair of the G7. Here, I'd like to see far-reaching reform so as to bring on several other powers, working on new forms of coordination. It is here, from this podium, that I wanted to share with you that tackling inequalities will be at the heart of the G7's mission. This is going to be the commitment discussed during the meeting, because in the past, rich countries were able to impose an agenda on the rest, but that time has changed. Here we've understood just how interlinked everybody is. Indeed, the time has come to combat current inequalities, which are indeed the root cause of the scourge I touched upon earlier. We must attack inequalities of fate, if you like. It's not acceptable anymore that an individual would have lesser opportunity simply due to where they are born or their gender, to lack access to health care for those very same reasons. Last year, with the president of Senegal, we spoke about this during the Global Conference for Financing for Development. And in February in Dakar, there was an opportunity to raise $2.5 billion to develop access to education across the globe. This is a historic sum. France has increased tenfold its contribution. G7 mobilization, under the Canadian chairmanship, will allow us to make further strides forward. This is a turning point, ladies and gentlemen. This is a time where we see if we will truly find solutions commensurate with the challenge. There are 620 million children across the globe lacking access to education. Let us address this. Give these children a foundation. Put them in the driver's seat of their lives. Should we not do this? Should we fail to do this? What world will we be leaving behind us? This is the reason that France has made solid commitment along these lines. This is why I highlight professional training, the training of teachers, as well as gender equality among students. It is also the reason that I call upon all to join this drive for education. Education will not just be the pillar in the years to come, but also the very foundation of our economies. We must unwaveringly push back against gender inequalities. In France, I made gender equality one of the big slogans of my presidency, and I'd like to see this be a global drive as well. Women and girls are the main groups impacted by poverty as well as climate change, inter alia. They are the main victims of gender-based violence or discrimination, phenomena which stop them from moving freely as well as from enjoying the freedom to decide what they do with their bodies. It is time to put an end to all of this. It is time to stop making women victims, but instead giving them their due place, which is one of leaders. It is time to guarantee across the board access to education, health, employment, economic and political decision-making, combating all forms of violence against women. France intends to put forward with interested governments, or rather to propose a coalition for the adoption of new laws on gender equality. 50% of our aid to development will be dedicated to projects which seek to reduce gender inequality. This is also a time to relaunch mobilization in inequalities in health. In 2019, we will be hosting a conference on the Global Fund for Combating HIV/AIDS, Tuberculosis, and Polio. We're initiating a drive against counterfeit medications and intend to take action against sweeping pandemics. Here, I call on each and every one of you to stand with us. Finally, we should understand the urgency of combating environmental inequalities. It is not acceptable for 45% of greenhouse gas emissions to be produced by the 10 richest countries of the planet. It's not effective, as is the case for solar energy, that countries with greatest capacity and greatest need be the very countries with least access to adaptive technologies. It's not sustainable for 100 million to be condemned between now and 2030 to live in abject poverty should we not achieve our goals in combating climate change or global warming. This, too, is an area for global mobilization. Some countries suffer more than others. We should stand shoulder to shoulder with them. We must all understand the disasters experienced by peoples and even our very children. The Paris Agreement has stayed intact, and that is because we have decided to stay unified in spite of the US's decision to withdraw. This is power, and this is the way that we overcome the challenges. We've been told that there are solutions, but financing is lacking. So let's find it. Let's think out of the box. That's what we did last year in Paris with so many of you during the One Planet Summit, with specific commitments and results already on the way. That's what we did in the beginning of the year in Delhi with the International Solar Alliance. That is what we will be doing tomorrow in New York with the second One Planet Summit. People say it's too late, that we won't meet our goals. Well then, let's hurry up. Let's adopt together the rules for application of the Paris Agreement at COP24 in December. Let's implement the protocol against the HFC gases, which could make global temperature drop by 1% by 2020, or 1 degree rather, by 2020. Let us set the goal of concluding in 2020 a global compact for the environment, which is ambitious, bold. What now about the conference in 2020? There have to be concrete steps taken. Let us also be clear, consistent. There's certainly an urgent situation. So let's, for an example, stop signing trade agreements with those who don't comply with the Paris Agreement. Let's have our trade agreements take on board our environmental obligations. Let us mobilize sovereign funds,